Hi all, I'm joined by Calum Knight. We're going to be discussing Namacheko Spring Summer 20. Kind of a bit of a milestone. It's their fifth show, so this is really the brand kind of carving out who they are, getting into the rhythm of this is us, this is what we create. The previous collections have been very self-referential. Dylan, who's the head designer, often references his childhood or his upbringing. Last collection was about the kind of duality between wanting to be a civil engineer and not quite working at university, and partying and loving art and painting and hobbies, and this kind of collision of ideas. Often they reference their Kurdish background, but this season was completely different, completely starting anew. It was referencing the film, I believe it's Godfrey Reggio's film, Koyaanisqatsi, something like that. Very sorry, she's butchered a very beautiful film, which is an amazing experimental film with no people in it. It's kind of lots of cityscapes, fast paced. I think it's early 80s, but there's lots of visuals, and Dylan was trying to create a character for this world, this place. Who is the person that travels this planet, what does that character look like? And so completely starting afresh, no self-referencing whatsoever, and what follows is a really interesting set of ideas. There's lots to digest. As usual with the Namacheko show, amazing knitwear and craft is absolutely at the forefront of everything they do. The intarsia knits and tops here were just beautiful. They have this geometric line on them, so everything had this. Often with Namacheko there's lots of linear patterns, sometimes it references art, sometimes it is referencing civil engineering, but in this case it was very much the visuals of the film. And if you can see a still from the film, there's cityscapes and lights, and it's all these wonderful linear patterns created by the kind of landscape scenery, and those are mimicked in these wonderful intarsia knits. Again, some really beautiful weaving. It was kind of giant crochet jumpers, slightly elongated in the arm, not too elongated. I know everyone's kind of a bit sick of the oversized, but just oversized enough to give this real sculptural shape, and the big huge looping weaving shapes, and in greens and yellows and these wonderful slightly off colourings that we kind of see in brands such as Kiko or Com, which I absolutely love. Amazing women's wear as well, lots more women's wear this season, and again that weaving, all these linear patterns but coming through literally. So you've got the different linear patterns in the knitwear, in the coats, but on the backs of jackets, physically in the jumpers, and then the absence of line in some of the ends of pencil skirts for the women's, and in some of the menswear too, the kind of cutouts, or also the emphasis on pockets. So to me this was very much about line and shape and pattern, which it often is with Namacheko. As I know it's a bit of a swooping statement, but because of the way the aesthetic of the film, there's so many graphics. It's almost like as every screenshot of the film is so precise, and you're just really kind of capturing the lines and shapes that nature makes. So that in fashion is just beautiful, and I love this idea of kind of stretching certain things, or looping certain things, or layering certain things, and nothing is just one element. Some of my favourite elements were the pockets, and in the fronts of some of the jackets they'd scooped down, so the front line of the bottom of the jacket was kind of square, showing off the pocket shapes, and in other jackets the pockets have been shoved right up and expanded, almost like a mini apron on the front as well. What I thought was slightly sciencey was actually fisherman-y, and these wonderful little glass like glass vials almost, which I thought was science, but they're actually really old fisherman lures and weights and things you put at the end of the wire to kind of dangle in the water, and those were everywhere, so kind of crossed in models' hair, on the backs of jackets, and then the very glass elements, again making that geometric pattern on the fronts of coats all the way down. And I believe Dylan was saying they'd gone in to get some wire, and they fishing wire for something I'll tell you about in a minute, and then they'd fallen in love with these little fishing weights and lures, and were like, we have to have them, let's get them. They're kind of prevalent throughout the show. I really enjoyed those. The wire was used to kind of cinch and kind of snatch little areas of jackets and trousers and skirts. The best example of this is on trousers and on the backs of jackets. It was almost like a focus on joints. So in the knees and on the backs of elbows, they used a little bit of wire and just ruched it. Just a very simple ruche. We're not talking ruffles and loads of layers. Just one. And back on the back of the elbows, just to give that different silhouette, to give that different element, and that's slightly customizable as well. As they create that ruche, it's how you bend it and create it, which I thought was brilliant. I really loved that, and it felt really modern to me. There was some slightly knitted, layered elements on the shoes. I probably could have done without those. And I did enjoy the hats because they added to this kind of mystical character feel. But I'm not necessarily sure that I'm going to be seeing them in stores. So I thought it was quite a good collection. What did you think, Al?
I think it's really funny that all of his self-referential collections, which are obviously all about human memory and experience, have felt very scientific and kind of slightly devoid of human emotion. Like if you think of the tailoring from the last season, it was all supposed to be about office workers, and it was all very pasted and felt kind of like computer-formed shape on top of a human body. And actually, being inspired by a film that has no humans in it, I think it was Namacheko's most human collection.
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
I think is a really funny duality. I mean, those fishing lures, to me, kind of almost seem like acupuncture pins, is what I thought they were.
No, you're so right, that's what I thought they were too.
And then, and they're in the hair, and then that elastic line on the elbows and on the knees, you know, when you put on these pieces, they won't be there. You have to just tug your jacket like that, and you have to interact with the clothes. And a really small example I saw of this that I just thought was so brilliant is if you look at past Namacheko collections, just before the hem of a coat or a shirt, they have these little diamonds that had been patched on before. And what they'd done this time, which was so clever, is they just slit the bottom of skirts for some of the women's wear, so it's just a line. But when the model walked, the way it pulled that fabric, it pulled it into the diamond, and then it went away again. And the only way that you would have this signature Namacheko styling moment is by a human being part of those clothes. And it was a real synthesis of clothing and the wearer, which is super exciting to see, because before it had been so not really about that, and it was about the body conforming to their shapes. And to bring that in, I just think is really lovely.
Yeah, it was really. Yeah, you're so right. It weirdly felt really personal, even though
it was the first one that wasn't.
We don't know this person.
Yeah.
It's just their character. But I think that's almost, when you're creating character, obviously it's kind of like Frankenstein. You're putting in elements of you subliminally without doing it. Good case of that is their t-shirts. So Dylan was saying that everyone likes an entry-level piece, something that everyone can buy and have a piece of Namacheko if you can't necessarily grab something that's 800 to £1,000. And so, but then they're not a statement t-shirt brand. They're not going to make a slogan t-shirt or a logo t-shirt. That's just not them. So rather brilliantly, they collected scraps, bits and bobs from leftovers and put them in a really beautiful layered approach. One of my favourite aspects of the show is just little fabrics from each of the seasons layered underneath. So this t-shirt has about 8 hemlines.
And it was just really lovely. There's a real tactility to their work, and actually, Dylan was letting us touch some of the clothes, and he was letting us touch. He was wearing some of it backstage, and he was like, "Phil, and it's so lovely to interact with, not just as wearing it, but just to feel and to touch, and they're so focused on, pushing fabrics to their limits and their capabilities, and they understand what fabrics can do so well, which not all designers do. Creative directors can be amazing creative directors, but they may not understand the properties of a singular fabric and how to use and utilize that fabric. And that's not an insult in any other designer. Everyone has their different skill sets.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's one of the real benefits of Namacheko, is their real understanding of construction and of fabric.
Yeah, and also their experimentation with that too.
Yeah. And the thing is, and it's a bit like Y Project and Glenn's understanding of draping, if you have such an amazing understanding of one aspect of that, no matter where the trends go, no matter what you do, you're set.
Yeah.
That understanding, no matter where fashion goes, will always be relevant. There's a few pillars of fashion, and those are one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, that's a really good point, that Namacheko benefits from being completely trendless. It's its own entity, and you go to Namacheko because you are so passionate about the craft, the design, and that aesthetic.
And that's why they've got so many stockers for a fifth season.
And that's why they're absolutely killing it. Yeah, so congratulations, Namacheko. Thank you so much for an amazing show. If you guys haven't seen Namacheko before, make sure to visit SHOWstudio, have a scroll through their previous seasons. It's definitely worth a look. And please do subscribe. A few more live reviews to come before we are done. See you guys very soon.